But of course here in the United States they do everything bigger and better. Why have a row of dealerships when you can have an entire motor city spreading up the hillside? Just about every car manufacturer is represented here, and one of the interesting things about Motor City is a lot of the different dealerships are owned by the same man. This is Phil Long, and everywhere you go in Motor City you see his name because he has virtually the monopoly of most car brands here. But is this a healthy situation for either the consumer or the car companies who offer the franchises out? I met up with Phil Long's frontman, Cimano.
Phil started in 1945. We're about 55 years old. And he moved here in 64, 65. I got here 10 years later in 75. And at that time, we only had Ford. As a matter of fact, Phil didn't want, wasn't really particularly interested in anything else. He was born Ford. He had the oval. His blood was blue. Lucky for me, he kind of let me do things my way, and I saw a need for growing. And in those days, Ford Motor Company, you couldn't, you just couldn't buy more dealerships. So if you're going to grow, you had to grow with other dealerships. And so the very first one I got was Mitsubishi. Now that really upset Phil at the time. I mean, not really upset. He wasn't angry, but he was a World War II pilot, naval pilot, and he got shot down by a Mitsubishi. So I didn't realize at the time I was talking to Mitsubishi. Phil, when I got here in 1975, he kind of stayed at home. So we took on Mitsubishi and later on Suzuki, and then we got picked up Nissan here in Motor City, and then Audi and Mercedes. And we did that. The three franchises we picked up were picked up during our serious recession in Colorado Springs, where you just weren't selling cars, and that's when you pick things. That's when you're able to buy things. So we bought Nissan and Mercedes and Audi. Audi at the time, you recall, Audi had that not scandal, but they had that serious black cloud over them, where if you started the engine, the car ran forward, and they had 2020, and some of the networks really did go against them. It really almost crippled Audi in this country entirely. So we got Audi from the ravages of that.
What do the car manufacturers think then of your sort of dealership, where they know that, okay, you're selling their cars, but you're also peddling the competition as well? Do they...
They're not happy. Ford Motor Company has never been happy with us over that. Motor City's been here since about 1962. A fellow by the name of Bill Smart, it was his brainchild to put all the car dealerships together, much like shopping malls, and this was back in the 60s, so it was pretty revolutionary kind of thinking in those days. All the dealers were downtown, and Bill Smart was sitting here with all this land here and one Buick dealer. Well, that doesn't get it. So he persuaded Phil Long to buy this piece of ground here, bring his Ford dealership over, and essentially traded the ground downtown. So he basically moved in here pretty cost-free. When that happened, then Motor City developed. And back in those days in the 60s, you really never built an auto mall, well as Chevy or Ford, preferably both. So once Bill got his Ford store, the Ford dealership to come here, then it developed.
Is it unusual? I mean, at the time, was it unusual to have everybody in one motor?
Oh, it was. This, to my knowledge, this was the very first auto mall in the entire country, to my knowledge. So yes, it was really unusual. But yeah, at the same time, Bill Smart, kind of guy, was a visionary, who thought that if you could do it in shopping malls, why can't you do it in car malls?
Jay's not just the boss of Colorado Springs Motor City, he also has premium and leaded coursing through his veins with a fantastic private car collection. I persuaded him to show me a couple of rare beauties.
This is one of my favorites. It's a 57 Chevy Bel Air, two-door hardtop. It's an original car. Car was sold new in Denver, and the people that owned it for many, many years, and it was garaged. And then I'm the third owner. The second owner actually showed the car, and she was one of those people that was a perfectionist, only to the extent that that since the car had never been painted, even if it had a scratch on it, she didn't want the scratch removed. I bought it from her. Reluctantly, she sold it to me. She was moving out of town. I had to promise her lifetime driving rights for the car.
Uh-oh.
Or otherwise she wasn't going to sell me the car.
Uh-oh.
So when I bought the car, I repainted it back to its original. Mm-hmm. And essentially, you know, we pulled the engine transmission out of it because nothing had ever been done to the car. But essentially, the car is original as you see it.
It's amazing. So none of these have been replaced. All the weak parts in Britain,
all the interiors, all original.
Yeah.
The car's got power steering, power brakes, and factory air, which was really a rarity.
Factory air back in 1950.
See the vents here?
Oh yeah, they're beautiful vents.
Yeah.
Wow, I love this detail in here. In fact, I'm not exactly sure what this is.
Well, what that's for is if you're up against a light, a signal light, you can look at that and it gives you a reflection of whether it's red, yellow, or green.
Ah, because they're strung
Yes.
up above the street.
It shoots up above. And that was one of the factory options back in those days.
And that's an original feature?
Original feature.
You don't
Original optional feature.
Right, fantastic. And the fairy dice, Jay?
Pardon me?
The fairy dice here?
The dice is something that I added to the car.
Not sure about the fairy dice. Now, the point about having these beautiful cars is you do use them. When do you drive this?
I will tell you one thing. I was in about a month ago, I was in a Mach 1 with a big 429 engine. I was driving it, and my son was driving this car behind me. I was going on the interstate, and I didn't realize he was behind me. I was traveling at about 100 miles an hour with this Mach 429, and he caught me with this car.
Is that right? Good grief.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have thought.
So, back in those days, Chevy called it the hot one. And they're running cars.